Good morning and welcome to episode 18 of Cannabis Live, brought to you by Cannabis Legal Group. I'm Craig Aronoff along with Barton Morris, and we come to you every Friday to talk about the ins and outs of the cannabis industry here in Michigan. Today we're going to be talking about dispensaries, otherwise known as provisioning centers. Please like us, share us, ask questions, engage us. We'd love to see your participation. And, I know we talked about dispensaries a couple weeks ago, Bart. What happened?
All right. So, it's a live show and we're dependent upon internet connections and depending upon the, even Facebook algorithms. And it wasn't our doing, right? But it turned out to be like 3 separate shows. And so I know that this week we're going to talk about laboratories, like testing laboratories. We're going to do that next week, especially because we have Iron Laboratories who has agreed to allow us to come into their lab and do a little video to put on our Facebook Live, and so we're going to look forward to that. And so instead, this week we're going to redo our show on provisioning centers, especially because there was some interesting stuff in the news recently about it, and because it's always a good topic, and hopefully we're going to have very good technical no difficulties.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that we're fortunate enough to do a video at Iron Labs next week. We actually had the pleasure of doing a video this week. You visited one of our clients' facilities in Detroit, and we'll show you that a little bit later in the video. But as we talk about dispensaries, I think it's important that we look at it from a past, a present, and future perspective, because as we've talked about the arc of medical marijuana here in Michigan, there's been an ongoing changeover, and dispensaries were attempted a number of years ago, and we've kind of had this fluidity that's led us to this commercial market where licensing is finally going to be from a state level. So as we talk about the past, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of the makeup of how these things were popping up?
All right, so from my understanding, in 2008, the Medical Marijuana Act was enacted that allowed patients to register with the Act and be supplied with their medical cannabis from caregivers, but from caregivers only. And as the industry likes to do, they want to be doing it commercially. And so a lot of these caregivers really having this strong desire to be in a commercial market, the desire just in general for the industry to be in a commercial market, tried to rush into it because the state hadn't had anything set up for it yet. A lot of places started opening dispensaries, and a lot of those dispensaries got shut down really quickly, especially in Oakland County. But others decided, okay, well, we're going to go into other places like Wayne County and like Washington County, where perhaps the city of Detroit and the city of Ann Arbor, they're going to be a lot more nice about allowing these operations to proceed. And so that's precisely what happened. A lot of very industrial individuals started dispensaries in the city of Detroit and the city of Ann Arbor and Ypsilanti and other cities around the state like Lansing that simply allowed them to operate. Perhaps because they didn't have the law enforcement necessary or resources necessary to shut them down, or perhaps because they wanted to have dispensaries within their city. And I think that really both probably is true.
So, and I think a good analogy that kind of discusses this is a driver's license. When we get a driver's license, it's from the state of Michigan, and it's recognized by every jurisdiction in the state, from the state government down to every local municipality. But some of these permits that were allowed, some of these state-issued licenses or city-issued licenses are really akin to a driver's permit for the city. And so the city is permitting it, and the city is authorizing it, and they're giving their permission to be there. However, the county and the state don't necessarily have to recognize that permit. And as a result, some operators were getting started and operating with the permission of the community that they were in. And unfortunately, other law enforcement agencies were, interfering with their businesses. Now, in some towns, it's been a little bit friendlier, and they've basically been left alone. And also the makeup and the style of those provisioning centers also plays a big role in that. Insofar as some of them are, counseling centers that offer some cannabis services as well. And so as we walk through the changeover, really what we're going to see is that there's going to be an added layer of security, an added layer of compliance, an added layer of operating procedures that we're going to be discussing in terms of what the future licensee is going to be required to do. Because in the end, this whole industry we're talking about is about what will happen next year when it's licensed.
So, we were talking about how dispensaries then started out operating in other cities, and they have been, the city of Detroit in particular, and the city of Detroit, instead of continuing to allow them to open up as quickly as they were, decided to enact a licensing ordinance to limit where they could be located and to license them. We've got to remember, though, these are caregiving operations that are not the commercial operations that the new state law is envisioning. And so the city allowed them to operate and license some of them, and there's maybe a handful of them that have been actually licensed at this time, including one of the first ones that we're going to show you in a second, which is Green Cross, which we have the pleasure of being affiliated with and associated with and assisting them in getting that license.
Yeah, and I think something that the video will do is, a lot of people have not ever been in a dispensary. We've talked about it kind of in a loosey-goosey kind of way, and we've described it from our vantage point and trying to give you our view of it. But we thought it'd be important to kind of really allow people to put their own eyes on how it's set up. What kind of environment they're walking into if they ever were opportunity to go. There's actually a lot of patients with ID cards that have never actually been in one. And as we go to the commercial market, and as we get to a point where that's going to be where they'll be able to get their medicine regularly all throughout the state at various places, there has to be a certain level of comfort and get rid of the stigma that they're walking into something that, is, kind of should be shunned or anything like that. Quite to the contrary, this is going to be, these places are going to be set up with, beautiful facilities, bright lights, knowledgeable tenders that'll be working with you and offering you your medicine. So I look forward to seeing how that video is received.
All right, you want to play it?
Yeah, sure.
I want to add, though, that I really believe this place, Green Cross, is exactly what a dispensary should look like. It is a classy place. There's absolutely like no security concerns. I didn't walk in there thinking, oh my God, could be a dangerous place. It was very well run. It's a very clean, respectable place. I definitely commend the operators there of giving the industry a good look at what a well-run, regulated dispensary or provisioning center looks like. And so we'll play this video. My name is Barton Morris from the Cannabis Legal Group, and I am here at the Green Cross Dispensary here on 8 Mile Road in the city of Detroit. This is one of the first dispensaries to be licensed as a provisioning center in the city of Detroit. The Cannabis Legal Group is very proud to have assisted them obtain that license.
Hi, my name is Baze Jarbo. I'm a manager at Green Cross Dispensary.
All right, so what's the address here?
14239 West 8 Mile Road, Green Cross of Detroit.
What types of different medications are available for patients that come in? As far we know we have flour, but what else do you have? What type of edibles? So I see
we have brownies, we have hard candies, we have truffles, we have gummy bears, we have suckers, we have coffee stirs. If you drink coffee, we have stirs with candy in them, and the THC will just melt into the coffee and drink the coffee, and it'll be infused with THC.
Awesome.
Yeah. Chocolate candy bars, 300 milligram chocolate candy bars.
And I see like vape pens.
Vape pens, that's a new thing that's up and coming. It's a cleaner, quicker way of actually getting the high. And most of the vapes right now, they're a lot cleaner. They're not using the butane fuel, they're using the CO2 extracting it. They're extracting it from CO2, so it's a lot cleaner, a lot stronger. Most of them are coming back tested at 80% plus on the THC.
What do you have in the cooler there?
The cooler, we have award-winning cookie dough this year, 2017 Cannabis Cup. The pink polar bear. It's cookie dough ready to eat. They have many different flavors. This one actually is 350 milligrams of THC. They won the best edible this year. Also have 250 milligram THC. It's like a Kool-Aid also. Same thing here, 250 milligrams. And we have a 300 milligram from rosin. So this is $15 just because of the way. This counter here, we have our crumble shatter, which is it's a form that, like, this is called crumble here. Just a different form of this wax. It's extracted from the marijuana plant. You can dab it, and it's that much stronger. Is at about tested at 70% THC. This is Obi Trice. You heard of Obi Trice, rapper with Eminem?
He's got.
Then he also has his D-Rocks, which is a moon rock, and that one is 30 a gram. And the moon rock is a piece of bud dipped in wax, rolled in keef.
Really?
Yeah. It makes it that much stronger. These are Granny G gummies, 100 milligrams. Each pack has 10 doses, means every 10 milligrams is 1 dose, depending on what your body can handle. This is hot sauce, 500 milligrams of THC. Eat it with anything, pizza, chicken wings and all. Tastes good too. Hot sauce is $15 a bottle for 500 milligrams of THC in there.
All right, great. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Well, that was hopefully something that you hadn't seen before if you've never been in a dispensary, and if you have, I hope you saw what a very nice facility and top-of-the-line facility is going to look like. What you got to see there was a variety of the different medicines. It's not all about the flower, and we've been saying that for some time. In fact, we did a whole show on extracts and labeling and products and so on. And what you saw was a snippet of what we have being produced at a very small level here in Michigan, and what will be mass-produced in the future. And I think that that's going to be a real difference in our marketplace as we have these opportunities for our provisioning centers to really fill their shelves even more with new medicines and new opportunities to deliver the different patients.
What you also saw was good packaging. All their products were packaged well, with good labeling, with understanding of the specific amount of THC contained within all of their products. All of their products are tested through Iron Labs, and so you know by going there that all the products that they sell are not contaminated with any unlawful or banned pesticides, and you also know how much you're getting. So when you're taking 10 milligrams of THC candy or whatever, then you know you're getting 10 milligrams, which is super important. And so that's a great example right there of well-run dispensary and a glimpse of what it's going to look like in a commercial market, but we're not quite there yet. So it's going to be a little bit different than what we saw in that video.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see, of course, in the future is more opportunity to really invest. While they've done a really nice job setting up and spending the money they have, there's going to be more incentive when you have the license to invest more in some of the other deliverables. Certainly the opportunity for new medicines, other additional branding. There's going to be a number of other brands that will be in town. So, the shelves will fill out with that, the lighting, the cabinets, and those kind of things. We're also going to have a whole inventory system. So as we talk about what the future will hold, and I think Green Cross does a really nice job of maintaining and tracking the way they're supposed to. In the future, we're going to have a more interactive system that actually talks to the state itself, and law enforcement will have an opportunity to tap into that. We get a lot of questions, from townships and different people, outside of the industry looking inward and asking questions about, how are they really going to know what's going on? And we described that tracking act and the seed to sale tracking. Well, it goes all the way into the dispensary, and the tracking goes all the way to the point when the patient purchases it and walks out the door. And at that point in time is when it's off the grid. And so the dispensaries are really going to be tied into the same tracking system and inventorying, so that our law enforcement knows all the way, kind of like if there's milk at a grocery store and if something goes sour, they know the cow that actually produced the milk. And in our case, they're going to know the farmer who produced the flower, or the industrial farmer, as it may be.
The Bureau of Medical Marijuana Regulation is going to be hands-on, and they're like anybody has never ever seen. They're going to be doing safety inspections on a regular basis. They're going to be doing compliance inspections on a regular basis, ensuring that each and every one of these just licensed dispensaries or other licensees are operating in the high regulatory manner in which that they expect. And if they don't operate in that manner, then they're going to get their license taken away. It's going to be plain and simple. So everything is going to be, as Craig said, everything's going to be tracked. The state is going to know everything that's going on. But in addition to that, they're also going to have strict regulations with respect to the manner in which that different products can be sold and the labeling and requirements that should be on each of these packaging. I know that I saw some of the packaging, like there's like the hot sauce, for instance. That was a 500 milligram bottle of hot sauce. I don't think that that's probably going to be permissible because somebody could drink the whole thing. You know, it doesn't really necessarily say that maybe one serving is a certain amount. I think that the servings are going to be identified, and every package is going to say that these are 10 milligram servings within this package. Perhaps that the bottle of hot sauce couldn't do that. I don't know. I could be wrong. We'll see. Sometimes people can be pretty smart about how they package things and how they sell them. But packaging is going to be really important.
Yeah, and it's all about dosing. I mean, you know, when we grab a bottle of aspirin or Tylenol or whatnot, we know what's in each pill. We know what we're taking. You know, if you're even taking a bottle of cough syrup and pouring it in, which is akin to the hot sauce, we know what each dose is, and that's what we're going to see from the regulations as it comes into the medicine itself. That's going to be on these shelves. And it's a totally reasonable expectation for purposes of how the labeling will come out. There's been some other things about the dispensary that I think that's important as we talk about the regulatory interaction. This is the one point in time where the industry touches the consumer side and touches the patients. Through the rest of the chain of title or custody of the flower, it goes from a grower to a processor, a licensee to a licensee. It goes from a processor and a grower to a dispensary. More licensees transported by an additional licensee in the form of that transporter. But when we get to the dispensary, that's when the consumer comes in. That's the public side, and that's where the patients with qualified IDs will be. A little technical there, but that's where patients are going to be in play, and I think that's why it's very reasonable to expect the Enforcement Bureau is going to be paying very close attention to how that inventory hits the street itself, and that'll be. But that's where patients are going to be. Okay, and so as we go on and talk about this. Hopefully we're working correctly here. We may be on Barton's page instead of Cannabis Legal Group, but we'll switch that over. A big issue that came up, Art, I'd love you to talk about, if we're still live here, is the recent news article talking about that bribery case in Garden City.
All right, so, it's been fascinating that I hear all these stories about what people can do in order to get a license. And there's people out there that are telling people, look, we can get your license. Pay us like an extreme amount of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we guarantee we're going to get a license. I can tell you, everybody right now, that's not happening. That's not legitimate. Anybody trying to ask for a large amount of money and guaranteeing a license is never going to happen. At least it's not happening now. I mean, that's not how things are going to go down. And people they're willing to spend that type of money. And there's an example of somebody who, by the way, I'm not going to. There's a story that came out about some individuals in Garden City that tried to bribe some public officials in order to get a dispensary license. I'm a criminal defense attorney, and so I'll be the first person to tell you that simply because you read it in the paper doesn't mean that they did in fact do what they're accused of doing. So they're just allegations. I am not trying to say that they're guilty or that they've done anything wrong. But what is important is that this became a news story, and so 3 individuals that allegedly attempted to bribe city officials in order to be able to get one of few dispensary licenses became not only news in this city, but I saw it on the Washington Post. So it's national news that somebody tried to bribe the city officials in order to get a license. It tells you a couple things. One is that clearly, like I said, this is big news. But 2, and the reason is because we're talking about marijuana, and I think that any type of situation where there's marijuana and this type of crime that you're trying to get away from instead of encourage, it becomes news. But Also, it tells you how valuable these licenses can be and how valuable, at least that people perceive them to be. Like if it's true, if somebody is trying to bribe officials in order to obtain a license and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in an effort to try to get a license, I mean, it shows you how strongly people want to open a dispensary and get involved in the game. It goes back to the whole reason I was talking about why people started opening dispensaries in the city of Detroit without really having any regulatory framework or state law to allow it in the first place, because there's a strong desire for this to happen. And thankfully, the state has enacted a law that's going to allow for it to happen. But you know what? People are going to have to play by the rules, and there should be no shortcuts. And certainly, we don't take any shortcuts. And I don't care what anybody tells me or wants me to do. I'm never going to bribe somebody in an effort to try to get a license. But at the same time, you know, I think that it's there's a fine line, you know, because I read in this article is that these guys are alleged to have promised the city, or maybe even these individuals, a portion, the city officials perhaps, a portion of their revenue, you know, and so that's something that I do believe can be a legitimate basis upon which to convince a city in order to provide them a municipal license, you know, promising them a portion of their revenue, as long as it's above board, as long as it's done in a manner that is publicly acceptable and not trying to do it like maliciously.
Right.
But that is something that I think can be done, which is say, hey, you know what, this municipality perhaps needs some revenue, and the dispensary or maybe a cultivator or whomever can provide a portion of that revenue and say, look, here's some money. We want to help the community, and that I find to be legitimate.
Yeah, in fact, we're working with a client in a remote area, we'll say, that has put together what's known as a community benefits package. It's actually a contract within their proposal that offers a 1% fund to be created, to be managed by the city, to be used for a public purpose. And the key is it's fairly transparent. It's a contract. It's written, and it puts it into public, you know, management rather than some kind of private payoff in the pocket of somebody just to gain the opportunity. And so, you know, that is a significant difference. And of course, the article is going to just show part of the picture. We don't know what their true intent was. We don't know what all the facts are. So we don't really want to pass judgment on that. But what we do want to do is make the comment of the industry just doesn't need the black cloud. It's difficult enough to get people that are skeptical of the delivery of the medicine in the interest of having it legalized for purposes of commercial sale to participate. And the more those stories kind of carry the day, the fewer other townships will want that in their community. And so what we really need to do is clean the slate of that gray cloud and really look at it as above board, fully transparent. Lots of clients say, you know, should we talk to the city? And our opinion is yes. They're going to know you're there. Or you can't get a license without them knowing you're there. So the earlier you engage them, and the more transparent you are, the more they might realize how safe your facility is going to be and how it's not going to be a danger or a nuisance to their community. And they need to know that. And they need to trust that. And they need to trust you as the operator. So that's why it's important that, you know, there is an actual bilateral communication about it. But certainly this kind of, you know, dark way of doing things that might involve payoffs is certainly something we need to broom from the industry.
All right, so let's really quickly wind up by talking about some things that current dispensaries can do in order to ensure that they get a license. You know, like for instance, I think they should be paying taxes.
Yes.
Some dispensaries are not charging sales tax, you know, and they should be doing that. They should have been doing that the entire time. They're selling a product within their city, within the state, and that requires a sales tax. So they should be charging and paying sales tax.
And they should be also paying any income tax.
Right.
You know, we've already talked to 280E earlier in time. That's the code in the IRS code that provides for, you know, taxation of sales of cannabis, in addition to other things. But, you know, the point being is you have to be a good corporate citizen. And if we're going to open with the idea that the marijuana board has already commented about operators now and questioning, you know, what will happen later, those operators better be acting like they already are licensed, doing all the things they'll be expected to do next year.
Yeah.
Make sure your inventory is sound. Make sure your patient tracking is sound. Make sure your taxes are paid. and participate in a way that you can demonstrate that if they give you a license tomorrow, nothing really changes. And I think that's a very important difference.
Yeah, you should have already your tracking software up and running because you're going to be using it anyway. It's a great idea to have your employees trained on it. You should be having classes, ensure to make everybody knows, and gets up to speed as to exactly how it works. And these things are available. BioTrack, MJ Freeway. These are things that are going to be necessary in order to work with the Franwell system metric, which is going to be it's going to be coming. It's going to be reality. Yeah. So, in addition to that, you talk real quick. I want to talk about the fact that you're right that these dispensaries are the connection to the public and to the patients. And so, to that end, I think that your employees, the provisioning center's employees, it's critically important to have them trained and have them knowledgeable about the sales that they're engaging in. Make sure that they're able to explain to the patients exactly what different medications can do and different types of medications that they have and different opportunities that they have in order to assist these patients. They are really the face of the entire industry. When somebody walks into a dispensary and they look around and see what it looks like and then are greeted by individuals that are working there, that's the image that our industry is portraying directly to the patients. And so it's critically important that these provisioning centers ensure that their employees are properly trained and are engaged in making the industry look good.
And with that, we look forward to seeing how the industry begins to kind of migrate towards that and evolve into our licenses. We have until December until the license applications will be submitted. And in the meantime, we got a lot of work to do to get our all the clients set up and get our operating procedures square. So. We'll be doing additional Cannabis Live episodes. The next one will be next week on Friday morning, 8:30. And we'll be talking about laboratory and testing facilities. We'll show you what one looks like. And we'll be looking forward to discussing that as well. So for Craig Aronoff and Barton Morris, we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.